Welcome into the state of the program, our weekly episode today, brought to you by our friend Adam Lowy over at the Lowy Law Firm. We appreciate it. We expected to go live at around 4 o'clock today for this, but to be honest with you, given the severity of the news that came out around 1:30 this afternoon, we figured we needed to go a little bit earlier. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by Jerry Hamilton. Jerry, the news comes out, Texas loses its starting running back, the only big back they had in the group that was ready for prime time. That's a bigger back. Cedric Baxter out for the season with apparently an LCL, PCL tear. It was not, as we reported earlier, we didn't think it was an ACL. It was not. It was an LCL and a PCL. What do you make of this for the Longhorns, other than the fact that it's just really crappy news?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, with Cedric too, is, look, he had to make a decision, right? You got to make a decision on your future with an injury like this. You can try to play through a little bit of it, but you could try to rush it back, or you can just get it taken care of and try to come back 100%. It was unfortunate injury. It was not a non-contact injury. It was a contact injury on the first full pads. So for him, just really that's a tough luck injury, man. I mean, when somebody falls into you in a way, that's a tough injury, right? There's nothing you can really do about that. So that with him, I think the decision, because he has a future in football. So that's what comes down. That's what we're getting at this morning. It was not an ACL tear. It wasn't even an MCL tear. The question was it going to be, what was that decision going to be like for him when you're looking at your future and you do have a future in football versus wanting to try to play? And I think he made the best decision for his future. I mean, and so that's he wouldn't have been close to 100% even if he tried to come back later in the season, right? So I think it was a PCL, LCL. You get your surgery, you come back full speed. As far as what it does for the Texas team and running back room, it changes a lot in what they were going to do. I mean, you hit on that this morning, Bobby. So Sark's kind of got to go back to the drawing board a little bit. Because it's not just plug and play. These guys aren't just plug and play. They're different types of backs with different strengths. It changes kind of some of the dynamics of what you want to do in your two-back sets. And Cedric Baxter was not good, but he was elite in pass protection, communication, and everything that kind of helping make Sarkisian's play action, longer developing route offense go from the running back position. So it's going to be they're going to have to get to the drawing board a little bit, I think, and make some changes here. So the good thing is, if you're going to have an injury, it happened August 5th or 6th, I should say, and not the week of the first game of the year.
Well, I concur there. I mean, the earlier these things happen, the better, but it's horrible that it happened at all, especially to a guy that was a leader on this team and looked up to by a lot of his teammates. He came out of his freshman year already having started the very first game of the year and started at Alabama even a year ago. So he has a good deal of experience in hostile territory. His ability was going to be big, especially in the interior running game and in pass protection. To your point, Jerry, you look at him as a inside runner. There's nobody really among the top three that matches him from a power perspective. Trey Wisner and Jaden Blue are certainly more of those outside run guys that don't run that inside zone. It's just not their specialty or their forte, I should say. So then it puts it on a pair of freshmen. Matt, our producer, has a graphic that he's created that I'd like him to bring up here, Jerry, so we can take a look at it. This is the players that now will have to step up for Cedric Baxter, who is now out for the season. The university actually releasing an official announcement of that, by the way, that it is expected to be the entire season. Look at the list. Jaden Blue, 6 foot, 200 pounds. Trey Weiser, 6 foot, 200 pounds. Christian Clark and Jared Gibson, 210 and 205. Cedric Baxter was a good 215, 220, and looked like he might get up to 225 over his career. That is a significant difference from a size perspective going into a league, again, that is more physical than the one they just came from. What do you think of that, Jerry? How are they going to have to substitute or replace Cedric Baxter this year?
So before we get to the players, let's get to the situation and how it changes things. So let's say you were going to run a two-backs. You're going to have two backs on the field, 21 personnel, whatever you want to call it, right? Pony package, like Rod calls it. But what if part of your scheme was Cedric Baxter as a running back and Jaden Blue in the slot? And Cedric Baxter is your pass protector. He's your extra pass protector. That's kind of the things that change, right? I mean, when Jaden Blue is a hellacious wide receiver out of the backfield. So you could put him in the slot and you can hunt matchups. And a guy, when you have a guy like Baxter, who you can also hand it to in that set, but is also a very high-end communicator and pass protector, some of those longer developing pass plays, he's a big part of that. On the surface, it doesn't seem like it, but he's a big part of that. So what do you have to do? You kind of have to adjust some of the things you've kind of been scheming in some ways all off season. So first of all, it changes things quite a bit from that perspective, your versatility perspective, because you're not going to do the same things with a Trey Wisner in that role that you would a Cedric Baxter. They're different players. They have different strengths. So that's what you lose. You lose a guy that was a standout in that certain area. Then when you're in your two backs, a lot of times he was your lead blocker on some of those plays. So there's that as well. Before we get into the players, and look, this season over? No. Next man up. This is football. Notre Dame lost their left tackle. Tennessee lost their star. These injuries are going to happen, but we're here to talk about how it does change it, and then we'll talk about the guys and what some of these guys and what they have to do to step up.
Yeah, you mentioned pass protection. I think that's it. It could change the pony package, the two running back package. There is the thought that what does this mean? Do you need more of an inline tight end now? If that was your best pass protector. The big piece for me is how quickly are they going to be able to rely on the other big backs that are both true freshmen, right? Christian Clark and Jared Gibson, at least both were here for spring practice, right? So they're not brand new on the scene, Jerry, but how do they get those guys up to speed in pass protection so that, I mean, frankly, Quinn Ewers isn't exposed, right? If you're going to try to be in a run game where you actually have a play action type of situation. Look, I don't know what's going to have to happen yet. I think we're a little unclear on that. But this is a big situation right now going on with Texas and what they're going to be able to do or be forced to do on offense, given that Cedric Baxter is out. I will add this. Cedric Baxter is a well-liked member of this football team.
Extremely.
Very well-liked member of this football team. I'm sure he will be a good teammate off the field, even though he's going to have to rest and recuperate following surgery. I did not get a date. I don't think you've gotten a date yet either, Jerry, for when he will have surgery. But he has decided he has elected that he was going to have surgery, and it will put him out for the remainder of the season. Jerry, other things as we look at this state of the program podcast today, the personnel at tight end has to play a role in pass protection. I do think that's a good thing from a standpoint that they have some older guys now with Juan Davis, Gunnar Helm, and Amari Nyblack. But are any of those guys actually plus pass protectors? Is this a situation where they may have to go more jumbo tight end with Malik Agbo in pass protection? It's a lot of different things going on in my head right now.
There's part could be that. I don't know if ideally Sark wants to have 6 OLs on the field, though.
Right.
I don't know if that's not ideally what he wants to do. I think what he's going to have to do now, impartially, is maybe more, instead of more of the pro offense part of the scheme, you're going to be more of the college offense part of the scheme in a weird way. So I think that's one of the changes that he's going to have to make, because there's not the dominant inline blocking tight end. Now, look, we're not doom and gloom here. We're just talking about this. Texas is a tremendous football team. They have a extremely talented roster. But when you lose one of your very, very key players, then it's going to cause you to have to change some of the things you're doing, because these guys aren't replicas of the same player. They don't have the same strengths. So there's going to be differences here in what Texas does. One thing we didn't talk about was Christian Clark and Jarrett Gibson. So it's funny. We were just talking. It's not funny. It sucks. But we were talking last week about, who are some of these freshmen? What freshmen could play? And we always said, look, injuries are going to happen. Running backs aren't going to stay healthy. It's a physical position. We didn't want to be talking about this on August 7th. And the starter and a preseason, third team all SEC guy, a guy that Nick Saban called the best running back they went up against last year, out for the year. That's not ideal. But now we're here, so let's talk about it. I mean, what does a Jarrett Gibson bring? What does a Christian Clark bring? Because one of those guys now walks into the running back room both those guys walk in with a different mindset than they had 2 days ago. Now they're going to be, even though they had a spring practice, Bobby, the push is different in your development from where it was 2 or 3 days ago to where it is today and moving forward. You're now a guy that's going to be playing in games this year, because you're now one play away from being number 2. And there will be another running back get nicked up this year. It's a physical sport. It's the SEC. It's a bunch of big bodies falling on each other. Somebody else is going to miss some time. So these freshmen now have to be accelerated, getting ready to get on the field. Jarrett Gibson, to me, coming out of IMG, mentally way ahead of the game. Being at IMG, we talked about this morning, is the thing with Jarrett Gibson for me, he's physically ready to play. I mean, I joke around, say he was probably doing push-ups at 2 weeks old. I mean, he is 5'9.5", 205, 210, compact, powerful pounds. As a runner, he's your in-between the tackles guy that can kind of hide, find a hole and dart, right? That's what he is. Christian Clark, different. Christian Clark, I think, has the best natural running back frame of anybody on the Texas roster. He's going to be 5'11.5", 6 foot, 225 pounds when all's said and done. He's more of the jump cut, skip cut, backside vision, violent cutter. So him and Gibson are different backs. One of the things with Baxter, too, is in the red zone. He was going to be your red zone back. When you wanted to line up and run the football in the red zone with a traditional lineup, maybe an Ogbo as your sixth offensive lineman, big tight end. So does a Jarrett Gibson have those opportunities, or do you maybe go spread more in the red zone with Jaden Blue and Trey Wisner? They're both really good runners, but you're not going to ask them to do the same things over and over again like you would do a Cedric Baxter. So Jarrett Gibson, Christian Clark, they have a little different skill sets. Physically, they're both ready to go. Mentally, they were both in for spring practice, which is a good thing. I'd be a little worried for Texas right now if neither one of those guys had been in for spring practice and they just showed up in June and here you are, you're in your fifth practice. I mean, I would say that's a different situation, but that's why having 17 to 21 guys in for spring practice, these young kids in, is so big because you are going to have injuries. It's a physical sport, and those guys get to accelerate in their growth.
Going to add this. It also is going to affect there will be a trickle-down effect on multiple different ways. Trey Wisner now is your number 2 running back, period, full stop. Now, he was already going to see time.
Yes.
But you can bet that I don't think he's going to be running down on kickoffs or punt. I don't think he's going to be a gunner now on punts.
It's a good point.
You probably don't do that with your number 2 running back. So there's going to be a trickle-down effect that's going to impact other pieces of the team. I would also say this. It is a huge opportunity for Trey Wisner. Huge. Not only is Jaden Blue, we know it's a big opportunity now for Jaden Blue because he is going to be your number 1 running back without question. it's a huge opportunity for Trey Wisner because Jerry, he now goes from a guy that may be a boutique player for you, 5 to 7 touches a game, to the guy that's probably 8 to 12.
Yep.
Touches a game, and he did it, overnight kind of. The thing that I would tell Jaden Blue, Trey Wisner, Christian Clark, and Jarrett Gibson, they're going to be fighting for more reps right now. Absolutely are.
Yep.
And the one thing that they can do that Cedric Baxter did really, really well, now, no matter what, and that's get good in pass protection. Yep. And know the offense like the back of your hand and be physical with pass protection. There have been small guys that can be physical with pass protection.
Yes.
Of that group, I do believe Trey Wisner right now probably knows the playbook the best, been doing it the most, and he's got a little, he likes to be physical even though he's not a big guy. You know what I mean? And so this is a time, in my opinion, for Trey Wisner to step up. All right, before we go further, I want to say thank you to our sponsor for the podcast today. Each and every Wednesday, State of the Program, brought to you by our friend Adam Lowy of the Lowy Law Firm. Reach out to Adam and his team at loweylawfirm.com. That's loweylawfirm.com. You can reach them there. If you've been injured in a car wreck, truck wreck, accident, automobile accident of any kind, and think you may need representation, Adam and his team have 20-plus years of experience based out of their Austin office. They reach all over the great state of Texas. All right, Jerry, we've got some questions we're going to get to. We're also going to talk about other things we've seen this week so far. This one from Mike Gosnell. How seamlessly does Jaden Blue slot into RB1 role? Does this affect the over-under win total for you? So he automatically becomes RB1. I don't think there's – so Mike, he slides into that role because he was already kind of co-number one as it is in just a different type.
Right.
Jerry, this is the bigger question. Wait, this is the bigger question, though. Does this affect the over-under win total for you? For me, I don't know yet. I want to see how they run out the rest of fall practice and how this offense is going to look now that it doesn't have that big power back that they can run inside zone with on a regular basis. I want to see how maybe we hear Christian Clark or Jarrett Gibson is doing that. Maybe we hear Trey Wisner stepping that. That is not Jaden Blue, though. That role is not Jaden Blue. It's not what he does. Doesn't mean he can't do some
but you're not going to do it 12 to 15 times a game, else he will get hurt. That's just not.
Yeah, you're not going to lean on him that way. You just can't. You would then reduce him on the carries that he does have and in the pass plays that he does have. So, does it affect your over/under win total at this point, Jerry? I mean, I'm not ready to go there yet. No. I'm also not ready to say no, it doesn't either. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think, look, slide into the RB1 role. Yes, scheme-wise, different. It's not going to be the same. Look, Jaden Blue is a really good football player, but you're not going to run inside zone with him 15 times a game, 12 times a game. You're not going to do it. For people saying, well, he can run inside, fine, but they're not going to do that 12 or 15 times a game with him. That's not a way to maximize his ability. And Sark is trying to put these guys in the best position to be successful and maximize their ability. Those touches, the way they're scheming Jaden Blue into this team, that was not it. That was not 15 inside zone runs a game. So that's just not what they're going to do. So running back one, yes. Same way, absolutely not. That's what I'm saying. This is going to change things for Texas. They're going to have to go not to the drawing board, but to the drawing board, meaning, all right, we got to look at this. What are we going to have to do to maximize now Jaden Blue and Trey Wisner? Because maximizing Cedric Baxter and Jaden Blue is a much different picture to paint. Much different picture to paint. And Sark's a great offensive coach. This is what he gets paid $10 million a year for, is to win football games and next man up mentality, and that's the way it is. But it does change the way you have to go about winning football games and the way these roles are, because we've had a lot of people join in, but just think about it this way. So if Texas goes to 2 backs and Cedric Baxter's in the backfield, that gives you can motion Jaden Blue into the slot and hunt a matchup for him. Now that's changed because Cedric Baxter's there as your pass pro guy. So now that's changed a little bit. That changes the way that Sark can attack and how we can attack. So that's what these guys get paid for. They've dealt with injuries before, but we're here to be real about it. And Jaden Blue's a very good player. Trey Wise is a very good player. I think Jarrett Gibson could be the short yardage back or Christian Clark. I think they're really good players with bright futures, but it changes everything you've been planning for. So now you got to go back and not hit the restart button, but you got to go back and make some changes. But they're not going to ask Jaden Blue to do what they were going to ask Cedric Baxter to do, because that's not putting him in the best position to be successful.
William Niche also had a super chat. Does the CJ Baxter injury change your thoughts on the team's outlook this season? We answered that essentially within that. I just think it makes it more unpredictable. If anything, we know what they have at some level at certain positions, and we know what Cedric Baxter can do. We got to find out now what Trey Wisner, Jarrett Gibson, and Christian Clark can do. So it just makes it more unpredictable, in my opinion. One thing that's kind of interesting here, and this is from Syrup Sailor, Jahmyr Gibbs dominated the SEC at 195 pounds. Yeah, but
he didn't dominate. He was a really good player. He didn't dominate the SEC, though.
Yeah.
He rushed for 925 yards. That's not – he had 440 yards receiving, but that's not dominating the SEC. I mean, he's a very good player, and he's a tremendous player in space. But dominate the SEC, I don't know about that.
Yeah. Look, the point being, I do think that you can have a nice season with that guy as your number one running back, and that Jahmyr Gibbs is much more like Jahmyr Gibbs is much more like Jaden Blue than he is our friend Cedric Baxter. So I would be reticent to really push on that.
I want to say this, Bobby. I want to say this for just to add to that comment that, on Jahmyr Gibbs, because we're going to be talking about Jahmyr Gibbs. What did Alabama do with Jahmyr Gibbs? Obviously, he had number one pick in the draft at quarterback with him, and then experienced offensive line. Jahmyr Gibbs, just so people know, he had over 20 carries twice. He had 3 100-yard games, only 3 100-yard games on the season. One of those was 206 against Arkansas in a blowout win. He had 154 against A&M, but carried it 9 times against Texas. He carried it 3 times against Vanderbilt. He carried it 10 times against Mississippi State, 17 against Auburn, 6 against Ole Miss, 15 against LSU. He carried it 15 in the bowl game. So receiving the football out of the backfield, he had 9 catches against Texas, right? Big yards. So running the football, I think there's a lot. We're going to be talking about these comparisons all year. But to the point, though, it's going to be similar. You don't just want to hand off the ball to Jaden Blue a bunch of times in between the tackles. That's not what you want to do. He can have a tremendous season. But what we're saying is it just change. The biggest thing to me it changes is what you can do with Jaden Blue in the passing game when Cedric Baxter's still at running back, because you have a strong pass pro guy. Sark can play with that Jaden Blue toy out of the backfield and get him in matchups he likes, and where Jaden Blue is absolutely dangerous with his hands as a receiver running back down the field. So it's just going to have to change things.
All right, this is Cameron Miller, and this is kind of what I was getting at earlier. Explain how losing Baxter will impact the other running backs' mindsets and focus. Also, how it changes OL and QB focus to pick up the slack. So I'll tell you one way it would change my focus if I'm one of the running backs not named Jaden Blue, because Jaden Blue's already earned his spot. Here's how it changes my focus. There's a spot available right now for a lot of playing time if you're the best running back in pass protection.
Yes.
Right?
100%.
So be that Jarrett Gibson, be that Christian Clark, or Trey Wisner. Which one of you is the best at pass protection? Okay. You're going to get to play if you're just really good at pass protection. That you were Trey Weiser's best press, and I mean this with all due respect to y'all know how much I like Trey Weiser. His best pass protection was not as going to be, no matter how hard he worked at it, it wasn't going to be as big or as good as Cedric Baxter's, right? But now there's that spot open on this roster. Who's going to be the guy that is the best pass protector at running back?
Yeah.
So even if it's Jaden Blue's the best running back, who's the best pass protector and a okay running back or a good enough running back automatically gets a slot gets a slot in the lineup, in my opinion. That should change their mindset, because I'm telling you right now, whoever goes out there and pass protects the best over the next 3 weeks, 24 days until they play football against Colorado State, that person's going to see a lot of time. And it doesn't matter if it's Trey Weiser or Jarrett Gibson or whoever. So that's how it changes. How it changes offensive line and QB focus to pick up the slack. Look, I don't know that it changes much on the offensive line, because they are more the infrastructure of pass protection, and the running backs have to figure out where they need to fill in the hole. I would say that quarterbacks may have to have their head on a swivel a little bit more, right? I mean, you know that it's possible, whether it's Trey Weiser or one of the freshmen that are pass protecting, or even Jaden Blue, they're not Cedric Baxter, and a linebacker might be able to run through those other guys, whereas he might have had a harder time running through Cedric Baxter. That's my take on that.
So I'm going to bring this up. I think Sharpshooter just came in to. We're not saying the sky's falling. We're just talking about it, man. I mean, so we actually just said Texas is a very deep and talented team. It just changes. It changes things. If you don't think it's not changing things in the coach's office and Sarkisian and his offensive meetings right now, I don't know what to tell you. Does that mean Texas is going to lose games? No, but it changes things, man. I mean, he's the starting running back. He's the guy that Nick Saban said was the best running back they went up against last year. I mean, it changes things. There's a reason that Texas, the staff is so high on the guy as an all-around football player. So we're just talking about it changes things. That's what we're here to talk about. It's not skies falling. It doesn't mean you're going to lose games. But so don't take out of context what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think that people want to say this because it's not just us that are talking. It's also the chat kind of belly aching and worrying, et cetera, Jerry. So I think that it's out there, and it's something that Texas is going to have to deal with. To your point, next man up. I really think that's the idea and the mentality. They're going to have to do it, but you can't necessarily do it one for one. And that is a problem, and it limits your offense from what you thought it might be just a day ago at this time. I mean, frankly, just a day ago, we thought Texas would rely heavily on inside zone. Do you think today, 24 hours later, Texas is going to rely heavily on inside zone in 2024? I don't. Would they run inside zone 10 to 12 times a game last year? You think, or more? They're not going to run. If they run it that many times, I'd be surprised, unless they catch lightning in a bottle with either Jarrett Gibson or Christian Clark.
Well, and look, and that's what recruiting is, right? Texas has recruited top 5 level classes 3 years in a row. This year will be 4. So what happens now is that we talked about, but the biggest jumps a lot of these kids make are first year to second year. And we've been talking about this. Ant Hill, Manny Muhammad, Cedric Baxter, John Tay Cook, DeAndre Moore, some of those guys that are in that position that are really key players for Texas. And obviously Baxter, Hill, Manny Muhammad, starters last year, and having a chance to make those big jumps. Derek Williams, big jumps year 1 to year 2. So now one of those guys is gone. What is the next group going to do? What is these freshmen going to do? Who's ready? Does it hurt you against Michigan? It might. I mean, that's the thing. It might. That's going to be a physical game, and Michigan's going to bring the house on you. That's going to change kind of some of the things you're probably planning against Michigan. But this is a great opportunity for Jarrett Gibson and Christian Clark. Jarrett Gibson's been at IMG the last 2 years. He went to IMG to get ready for this opportunity. And now he's getting this opportunity to be more of a factor, probably earlier than he anticipated and Texas anticipated. But physically, him and Christian Clark are ready to go. Mentally, are they going to be there within the scheme of what Sark needs them to do? That's what they're going to have to prove out over the next couple of weeks here for Sark and the staff.
All right, Matthew Miller here. I had a feeling in the offseason if Baxter got hurt, he may never get his job back. Do you think he may never be the starter again or even transfer? Look, he's going to play in the NFL, so whether he becomes a starter or not, as long as he's healthy, I think he's an NFL running back. He's just too big, too fast, and runs through contact too well. So I don't know if he'll ever be the starter. I don't want to sit here and say that, but I love Cedric Baxter's upside long-term as a football player. That's where I'm at.
Yeah. So I don't, Cedric Baxter's not, I mean, he's a great kid, man. He will attack this.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. He's not walking away.
Tyler Mazer has this question. Can someone explain to me why so many people love Jaden Blue so much? I think he's going to be great, but losing Baxter hurts this team. Beyond just a depth issue, Baxter was the better back last year. I think he was the more complete back. There are things that Jaden Blue does better than anybody on the team, and that's as a receiver out of the backfield and acceleration on the outside. I talked to a guy that went to a practice last spring that was a longtime college coach, and he said the thing about Jaden Blue is he's a touchdown scorer, and you need those on your team. Doesn't mean they have to be the every down guy. But guys that score touchdowns, those are really important for you. So I don't think it has to be an either or. I really don't. But we'll go from there. LL asks, medical red shirt for Cedric Baxter? Absolutely, he'll get a medical red shirt if he wants one. I don't know that he'll necessarily need one. Again, I think that he is going to be a young man that gets going to the NFL fairly quickly. Overall, Jerry, you have anything else that you want to add to this Baxter / Jaden Blue and running back conundrum now that Texas finds itself in?
Yeah, it sucks for Cedric. It sucks for the team. I think the combination of Baxter and Blue, what they could do playing off each other, has had me really excited about what we would see. Especially when they went to that two back and Baxter's in that running back, and you can put Jaden Blue in the slot and do some things with him in the passing game, which I think he's tremendous hands as out of the running back at the running back position. So now it's just going to be different. I mean, that's the thing. It's going to be different when Blue. How does a Blue and Wisner two back set really work together versus a Blue and Baxter or a Baxter and Wisner? How does that look for the coaching staff? Those are the questions that they're going to be answering in their room. How does that change what they want to do? How does that change maybe how they wanted to attack a Michigan, right? Who's going to be a big physical team in their front seven. So those are the things they're going to have to work through. It's a great opportunity for Trey Wisner. I'll say that, a great opportunity for Trey Wisner. And he is, in his limited touches, he's looked very good. Bobby, I thought you brought up a great point. It's going to be hard to have him as a gunner. You need his legs fresh. He's playing more at running back, right? So there's a trickle-down effect with that. Jaden Blue's been a second-team gunner. Those days are over. I mean, so that changes some things that trickle down to special teams. So now you're going to have more youth, younger guys having to mix in, learn a little bit more on the fly with a little less experience. So there's a trickle-down effect to that, how it changes. I think from a football standpoint with this team this year, again, it changes how they might want to use Baxter and Blue together. Who can be a really good, strong running back and pass pro that you're going to ask to do that? And who is going to be your short yardage red zone back when you want to get into more power sets, when you just want to fall forward for 3 or 4 yards, create that little fall forward for 3 or 4 yards. Again, and I'm not saying Jaden Blue can't do that. I'm not saying Trey Wisner can't do that. What I am saying is you don't want to continuously ask a guy like Jaden Blue to do something that you're not maximizing his talent. So I just don't think you're going to see Sark do that. So it's a great opportunity for Trey Wisner. And it's going to be interesting to see which of these freshmen kind of take an opportunity and run with it coming up, because there's now opportunity. But two days ago, Jarrett Gibson and Christian Clark were competing for the number 4 back, and maybe you get some action against Colorado State. You're now competing for the number 3 back, which means you're a play away from carrying it 10, 12 times in a game. It's a big change in 2 days for these kids. So let's see.
24 hours ago, there would have been 50-50 odds that either Christian Clark or Jarrett Gibson even got a carry or an appearance against Colorado State. 50-50. Now that's an 80-20, because they're going to have to give them some baptism by fire, right? They have to get those guys, young guys, some touches so that, in case you do lose, then one of Jaden Blue or Trey Wisner, the other one's not completely wet behind the ears, right? So I agree with you, Jerry. Those guys are going to, if they weren't on notice prior to yesterday, they are today. They are today. Learned Hat also said, I mentioned about touchdown scores and called that's what I called Jaden Blue, because I kind of think that's what a good descriptor for him. He says, I want touchdown scores, but I don't want sack giver-uppers.
Right.
What fits that need the best? Here's your answer for you, Learned Hat. I don't know. We don't know who that is yet, because we haven't. Now Tashard Choice and Steve Sarkisian might have an idea, but Jerry, neither myself nor Jerry, I think, know who is the best pass protector in that offense after Cedric Baxter. Is it Trey Wisner? Is it Jaden Blue? Is it one of the young freshmen that they think may have a real chance to be good at that and stick his nose in there? I don't know. From my memory of the spring game, I would not say that Christian Clark was a natural pass protector. I remember one time where he just looked a little lost in pass protection, which leads me to think that maybe Jarrett Gibson might be the guy they look at first. What also gives me a feeling of that is on Monday when Steve Sarkisian was asked specifically any young guys starting to make an impression on you. One of the guys he mentioned was Jarrett Gibson, running back out of IMG that is a true freshman and a bigger running back for the Longhorns. Yep. All right. Bobby Betronic has a good question here, guys. Do we go more 3 wide to lighten the box and get the smaller defenders on the field, or go big tight end and threaten the edge all day? My guess, Jerry, and this is just me thinking through things, it's going to be a mix.
Yeah.
Sark likes the playbook a little too much. Rod always talks about him not always playing the hits. Like Sark likes to kind of bebop around the playbook and find little things. I don't know that you're going to have him be singled out in that way. I would think that given the lack of a big time inside runner, they're going to have to figure some ways out. And so is that becoming extreme and running 3 wides all the time, or flexing the tight end? I mean, I don't know. I think that's a fair question. The other issue is when you get into the SEC, I think they've got better guys on the back end than the Big 12 too, and they tackle better. So I'm a little it's a hard question, and this is what, Bobby, I saw your post on ontexasfootball.com today, by the way, and I just nodded my head. It does change, and that's one of the things Jerry and I talked about at the very outset of this podcast. It does change the approach Steve Sarkisian has for his offensive scheme. It absolutely does, because this is the guy, for lack of a better term, that was the sledgehammer. Now, he had enough speed to make it outside and do some other things in the passing game, etc. But he's the sledgehammer. Jaden Blue, Trey Wisner, not sledgehammers. And so you just lost that aspect, and we don't know what it does. And I'll add this. We don't know what it does in the red zone. We know Sark spent almost all offseason working on red zone answers. Was Cedric Baxter part of the answer in the red zone? You would think so.
Yeah.
Right, Jerry?
Well, yeah.
Now,
I think
you may not have that.
I think Jarrett Gibson could be a stud in the red zone. I just think he's a guy that's compact, powerful. He can hide behind those big offensive linemen. And again, I think he's got a really good opportunity in front of him, because the one thing I'll say about Jarrett Gibson, and not in pass pro, but as a runner, is we were talking about this earlier today. It's a good thing he was at IMG for 2 years. And this is why kids go to IMG sometimes, is look, he's accustomed to the holes pinching tighter than a Christian Clark who played high school football in Arizona, not the level of competition every day in practice at IMG or in the national schedule IMG plays. So every time Jarrett Gibson took a handoff at IMG, and I've been at those practices before, those front seven guys are all Power 4 players. They're all going to Georgia, Alabama, name it. Just look around college football, okay? Every time he took a handoff, somebody was in his peripheral. Every single time. Every time he took a handoff, what he saw, that hole he saw, that linebacker he read, that hole would pinch a little bit tighter, quicker than it would if you weren't playing really good high school competition. So Jarrett Gibson, physically, and being at IMG, he's going to be prepared for this from a running back standpoint, taking handoff, seeing things in his peripheral moving really quickly, reading that linebacker really quickly, and maximizing a play. The pass pro, we'll have to see. But Jarrett Gibson's I think he's going to be a strong player from inside the tackles, running the football.
All right. We do not want to be solely about Cedric Baxter, although this podcast has been primarily about him. This is the state of the program, brought to you by our friend Adam Lowy of the Lowy Law Firm. We don't want to miss the good news that happened today. We talked about it earlier. I did a live commitment announcement with him and following what he did at Saxe High School earlier today. Focus on real timing. I was at Kalik Lockett's commitment today. Thanks for sharing that with us, Focus. Big news for the Longhorns there, Jerry. Now Texas at 17 verbal commitments on the recruiting campaign. What were your thoughts on that commitment now that you had a couple hours to think about it? You've seen some reaction. You also listened to his post during his press conference announcement and some things he said after that. Any follow-ups?
Well, yeah, my biggest thing is I think he's a great culture fit at Texas. He's a funny kid, man. He's got a sense of humor. He's got some wit about him. So I don't talk about that stuff much, but I mentioned that during his live commitment. We were on live, and I wanted to mention that again. I think he is a really good fit at the University of Texas with the players at Texas, with what Steve Sarkisian's built. One thing, the biggest thing I think he brings as a player is in the SEC, longer limb, taller corners. So having guys that play on the outside that can go win a 50-50 ball, that have tremendous body control, that, if your quarterback's under duress a little bit more in that league with the level of athletes you're playing against, and then when that quarterback's under duress, he's having to make a throw against some taller, longer corners. I mean, just look at all the DBs that got invited to the NFL Combine from the SEC last year. I think it was half the total DBs at the Combine. There's going to be longer limbs. There's going to be taller guys on average in the SEC. I think Kalik Lockett's got tremendous body control, 79, 80-inch wingspan, 11-inch hands. But I think he can go win 50-50 balls. I think he's going to be very kind of a shrewd route runner, smart route runner. There's a reason Sark and Kalen DeBoer wanted him because he's such a good scheme fit in each of their schemes, and he's the way he can fit within those schemes, running the routes in the intermediate and then vertical game. He can win without being explosive fast, which not a lot of guys can do, which I think is a big strength of his. Red zone, outside X receiver, win 50-50 balls. If your quarterback's under duress, he can put it in area code, and he may come down with it. He can fight for that football. I think those are Kalik Lockett's strengths, and I think that makes him one of the better receivers in the country as an outside guy in this class.
Hey, real quick, somebody's asking about Andrew Marsh, the wide receiver out of Houston. He put Texas in his top 5, but we don't believe Texas is actually fully pursuing him at this time. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I don't. I think that'd be a surprise to me. Look, Jamie French announces August 30th. That's Texas has been a good spot there. Miami's throwing all the kitchen sinks in Coral Gables at it, but Texas has been in a pretty good position for that one, like they were for Khalil Lockett as of July 5th. So I think, then there's speed guy. Look, if Jamie French goes Texas's way, then they're going to be looking. That third guy would be a speed guy. Sark doesn't tend to give up on his top targets, guys. I mean, don't think that Sark's just going to throw his hands up because Kelshawn Johnson committed A&M and walk away. I think Sark's proven time and time again he's not going to do that.
All right. One other question I had here that I thought would be a one to talk or discuss, or kind of an important piece to this. Joe Natural, a longtime poster on the various message boards, et cetera, always in a unique locale in the Caribbean or in Mexico, I think. He says, viewers will put on the cape. By the time we get to OU and Georgia, our between the tackles game will be turned loose. That is probably true. To a degree, in that maybe it just takes some time for one of those freshmen to get acclimated. I can see that. I would say this, and I would caution this. This does not need to change Quinn Ewers' mentality.
No.
He needs to stay grounded and do what he can do. He doesn't need to go out there and think, hey, I've got to put on a cape because XYZ player, we just lost him. That is not what this team needs. That's not what Steve Sarkisian needs. He needs a guy that's going to distribute the ball, because there are playmakers.
Yeah.
I will say this. As important as we've made Cedric Baxter to this roster and talked about his help in pass protection and still providing a threat in the run game, I wouldn't say he's one of the four biggest threats for Texas on the offensive side of the ball. I wouldn't. I'd call Jaden Blue a bigger threat. I'd call Silas Bolden or even Isaiah Bond or perhaps Jonte Cook a bigger threat, or Amari Niblack a bigger threat. So as good as Cedric Baxter is, he's that all-around player. There are still going to be threats, and I just think, if anything, Quinn needs to be highly focused on getting the ball into those hands. This one from Randy Jones.
Hey, this is why you recruit all the speed. This is why you recruit top 5 classes. I mean, at the end of the day, and this is why you're a blue blood in the portal. Texas has a lot of talent on this roster. Look, the coaches aren't sitting there today thinking, "Oh my gosh, we're going 8-4." No. That's not what's happening here. They just have to recalculate a little bit. There's a lot of talent on this roster. Best quarterback depth I think Texas has had. Receivers are really good. Tight ends as pass catchers are very good. The other thing we have to hit on is, one of the other things that changes is Cedric Baxter was your helper with that right side of the offensive line. So who's going to do that in pass protection? Who Texas is going to have to scheme that a little different, I think, early in the season, especially against the Michigan. So it just changes. You got to adjust. You got to adjust on the fly. At least it didn't happen August 20th, but you got to adjust because you've been putting in plans for the season, and he was a big part of those plans. Now you just have to adjust and change up some things. I think the good thing is for Texas fans, I don't think you're not 3 games into the season and you've been watching what Stark ideally wanted to do with this group. And now you're like, okay, man, this is going to change a lot. You're never going to see kind of what they were planning, I think, is the key thing, because this injury happened before the season.
David Keith Williams comes out with Trey Weiser played RB in 3 games last season and had 12 carries for 73 yards. I think as a true freshman, Gibson and Clark will be utilized much more than Weiser was as a true freshman. Yes, that's true, but Weisner at best was the 4th string running back most of last year. We're saying right now already one of the 2 freshmen is the 3rd string running back now. So how many did Jaden Blue have? How many carries did Jaden Blue have last year? Because he would be similarly situated to any of the freshmen or either of the two freshman running backs right now. There's some thought people are saying in the chat, what if they split some time and you gave time to both of them? I think they'll do that early for sure, just to get a sense on where those guys are, Jerry, in a real live situation. I think that's where this is. Another question that's come up that I think is worth addressing, Jerry. Sark has this run of 1,000-yard backs, right, that he's had forever. Do you think Jaden Blue now is that guy? In my opinion, he has to be. He has to be the 1,000-yard guy if they're going to keep that trend going. If Sark's going to maintain that, you agree with that or no?
Yeah, if he is, they're not going to use him in the passing game as much as they ideally had planned before the season.
Yeah,
that's the one thing I would say.
All right, Rick Amber guy says Sark may scheme more 12 personnel with TE help in pass pro. They have the ideal depth and versatility at TE to do this. Yes. Here's my take on it. So when I was listening to Gunnar Helm yesterday, and we had him for the media availability, he said that one of the things that Amari Niblack is getting better at is pass blocking and, run blocking. So the blocking aspect of it. That means that he needs work. He needs work on it in the first place, which isn't like comforting if you're worried about him as a pass protector right off the bat. Now, Gunnar Helm, I think he's been okay, actually good in run blocking, but not great in pass protection. We haven't seen Juan Davis do a lot of pass protection, but Juan doesn't have those long arms or wide wingspan that you want for a tight end pass protector. Long term, Jordan Washington may end up being the best pass protector, but I don't think he's ready for today to be that guy day one. So I think that's these are all interesting questions. Jerry, it's going to be time for us to be getting going here around 4:00 now. The news today, Cedric Baxter out for the year, will have surgery. It was not a torn ACL, but as we mentioned earlier today, we had heard that there might be some other compromised issues. It ended up having an issue with his LCL and his PCL. I hope to get more clarity on what that exactly is tomorrow, potentially, talking to a doctor maybe. But the long short of it is Cedric Baxter is out for the year. University of Texas issued a brief press statement saying that he has elected to have surgery and will be out for the year. Jerry, before we let folks go, anything else you want to add or talk about here?
Yeah. So somebody asked if Jarrett Gibson's 19. I think he's already turned 20. But somebody asked Jose Rodriguez, Jerry, Bobby, who on the team's the emergency running back? I don't think we need to go there, but I just want to say this in kind of a joking, fun way, but it wouldn't be. If we ever have to address that on this show, then wins are being affected.
Yeah. Well, I would tell you
that wouldn't be a good thing if we have to start having that conversation.
Well, I'll tell you right now who could play that position and be just as physical as Cedric Baxter is Anthony Hill.
Not doing it.
I know. But you agree with me, right? He could actually play that and be physical, but you just can't take a difference maker on defense, I think.
Now, look, if we ever have to answer that question, that means two more guys went down, and that's when wins are probably affected this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I want to add this. DJ Sanders does announce tomorrow. Somebody's asking that in the chat. We believe it's going to be around midnight tomorrow night. DJ Sanders, defensive lineman out of Belleville. Earlier today, Texas did pick up commitment number 17.
Bobby, are you going live for that? Are you going to go live for that one?
I think that's always a possibility. I think it's always a possibility. It all depends whether or not I'm still up catching the morning Olympics. Probably. We'll see.
We'll let the people decide if y'all want us to go live. I mean,
Hey, all right, that'll do it for our producer Matt Hutchison. Thank you very much, Matt. for our sponsor, Adam Lowy, over at the LowyLawFirm.com, and Jerry Hamilton, as well as myself. Thanks for listening to this afternoon's live stream. We'll be back at 7 with more news on the Longhorns. Longhorns, by the way, get back on the practice field 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Hook 'em.